Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Griffin. I am the town manager for the town of Merrillville. I've been associated with the town since September of last year, actually September 6th, I believe, last year. And I welcome you to this first ever attempt at a live streaming town hall, if you will. I'm actually doing it first. Our eventual goal will be to have other officials of the community, other department heads, and certainly we hope that some of the elected officials might be open to doing this. But since we're kind of experimenting with the medium, at least for Merrillville, this is probably more widespread in other places. We thought that I should be the person that would take the risks in case there's a major mistake. It'll rest with me and no one else. I am joined here by our media officer and content manager. You can't see him, but he's helping me behind the scenes, Chaz Riley. So we're going to begin today. The subject today is going to be on the food and beverage tax, but we're going to be open to talking about other things as well. And I'm going to begin with a few that I've been advised from time to time are questions that we sometimes receive on our website or on our YouTube or Facebook or Instagram sites, and we want to try to address them. So first, how can you stay informed about what's taking place in Merrillville? There you go. Well, you can certainly go to our website, which is www.merrillville.in.gov. But for you that like some of the other more modern social media, you certainly can find us on YouTube. We actually have a YouTube space there. You can also find us on Facebook. And if you're an Instagram user, you can find us there. I just recently got on Instagram, or I think reactivated my account after a while, and I'm regularly getting things about the town of Merrillville, pictures, new information. So for those of you who use that, you may find it very helpful. You also can sign up at our website to get email alerts if you prefer that. I've done that as well. Just to give you the addresses in case you're interested, YouTube, all one word, you being the second person, singular or plural, personal pronoun, for tube.com at town of Merrillville, all one word, and you want to capitalize T in town, and the M in Merrillville. The other one is www.facebook.com/the town of Merrillville. Treat it as all one word. However, capitalize the T in the, capitalize the T in town, and capitalize the M in Merrillville. And finally, our Instagram account's address is www.instagram.com/town of Merrillville, separating town from of and of from Merrillville, and they all can be in lowercase. I hope that addresses that for us. The next question that we from time to time or often get in our media is, how can I get my branches collected? Glad that you asked. The Street and Engineering Department for the town of Merrillville does this as a service for our residents, and they're currently underway. They have a crew that actually regularly goes around and will look for the branches near residents. So if you have an inclination to do that, and you have your branches that you'd like to see us collect for you, bundle them up if you can, but at least gather them so they're close in proximity in a pile. And we ask that you set them out in front of your home near the parkway if possible. And then they'll be picked up. Now, the branches must be less than 6 inches or less in diameter, meaning you can't have a big log out there. They've got to truly be a branch. And you can drop the branches off anytime also at our North Barn, which is located at 5750 Tyler Place, also in Merrillville. If you'd like to call for more information about this, you may call 219-769-5711 and press extension 209. Now, the current service period for branches will end on September 28th, 2024. So you want to make sure that you get those bundled up and ready to go before September 28th of 2024. If you have a concern or you'd like to report a service request, you can always call any of our departments to report an issue or inquire about a potential service that we may or may not be offering. And all the content information is available on our website, which we gave you earlier. And you can also submit an online form to report concerns and request service. And the online form is also available on our website, and the link is posted also in the chat in the video description. You can also call 219-769-5711 and listen for the array of offerings that the automated attendant will give you for extensions, but you certainly can always press extension 302, which is the extension that takes you into the office of the town manager. It's actually my extension. When are regularly scheduled town council meetings? Great idea. Something I needed to know when I got here as well. They're always generally scheduled. They are always scheduled for the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, beginning at 6:30. And they are always taking place here at the Town Hall, 7820 Broadway. And as packets from the past meeting available on our website. So if you would go to our website to look up the minutes, you'll also see proximity once it's loaded. Sometimes it takes a few days. There's a slight delay between when the minutes go up and when the video goes up. You can actually see the videos there too, and you can watch them at your leisure. Again, it would be the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month. We only make modifications on that if there's a holiday or some other matter comes up, but we'll give notice on all of our media that we just described, social media as well as the website, and we send out media consistent with the requirements of the Open Meeting Act under Indiana law. Okay, I think I've got all the questions that we thought were regularly asked of people here, and I'm ready to take on questions with regard to our topic tonight. Is there anything ready for me, Mr. Riley?
No questions immediately, so you can go right into your...
I will do that. Generally speaking, the food and beverage tax is a form of excise tax. Now I'm going to put on my public finance nerd hat. I'm on teasing about this clerk as well, who is our fiscal officer. But it's very common for town managers in most communities, which is the town council, to have some background in this to help assist the council when it's making policy choices. And sometimes the clerk treasurer will do that as well. So for details about this, you're certainly welcome to call the office of the clerk treasurer about it, but I'm going to do my best to give you some background. Wherever you are in the world, there's only three kinds of taxes that exist. And that's right, just three. One is an income tax, and it can be imposed in a variety of ways, but that's it. The second kind of tax, scholars call excise taxes. In our case, are the most common form of that tax to be the retail sales tax, which Merrillville doesn't impose, but the state of Indiana does impose on those transactions. It's identified as subject to that tax. One of its cousins is the food and beverage tax, which is only imposed on a smaller, much more narrow body of activity, and is collected by those businesses that actually engage in that activity that's subject to this tax. In Indiana, this is not a tax that's automatically available to all cities and towns. As a matter of fact, the earliest time that this was first imposed or allowed to be imposed was granted by legislation from the Indiana General Assembly that was in effect in 1986 for Allen County, which was the first place that was able to impose it. Roughly now, 34 entities are allowed to impose it. And generally speaking, the purposes for which it may be imposed can vary. There's a list of those kinds of places. I believe we can put up that slide. There should be a slide that starts to list all of the communities in alphabetical order that have some sort of a food and beverage tax and what it actually supports. This law was made effective last year at the end of that General Assembly and in the year 2023. And it was permitting both the city of Jasper and the town of Merrillville to an up to 1% food and beverage tax on those items that it was subject to. Now, under the law that authorized Merrillville to impose it if it chose to, that its proceeds only be used for the purposes of parks and tourism. Tourism would be like the visitor's economy. It also may be used broadly, either for operations or for capital purposes. It also may be used to finance the construction of capital related to parks and recreation or tourism. So, under that law, the town of Merrillville's council took steps in December of 2023 to authorize and impose the tax. Now, based on the law in Indiana that authorized this for the town of Merrillville, this tax was not in effect technically until February 1st of this year. And it's imposed on food and beverage taxes that are basically presented in the context of a restaurant, which can include a coffee shop, As liquor, restaurant can include a saloon or dram shop, if the dram shop serves in the restaurant with food, and other items. So some of those can involve prepared or served foods, catered foods and beverages, food where two or more ingredients are combined because it has to be prepared foods, foods sold in a heated state, and food sold with eating utensils. Now, businesses are required to collect it from you and they have to get registered for it if you're subject to that. And one of the other things that's curious about this tax is the way in which they define the tax base. It isn't just those items I described, but it very often involves where the food might be vended. So, for example, if the food is vended in a restaurant, nearly always that tax is subject to food and beverage tax. If the food is vended in a grocery store, an example would be hot food at any grocery that you might have. Those would be subject to it, but pure grocery or grocer items are not subject to it. So all the food that could be sold in a non-prepared state is not subject to the tax. So one of my favorite examples is if you go to Strax and you buy a sandwich that's been wrapped already, pre-packed, and made available as self-serve in one of the frozen freezers or refrigerated sections, that's food and beverage tax. However, if you go to the deli and you have them prepare the sandwich for you on the spot, that is subject to the food and beverage tax, basically based on the retail value of the transaction for the bread and all the fixins. So you see that the food and beverage tax has got some unusual permutations depending on where the service occurs. Same is true in convenience stores. If a convenience store gives you something with utensils and is prepared, it's probably subject to that. Fountain beverages, no matter where they're dispensed, those are subject to the food and beverage tax. Packaged liquor, not subject to it. I could go on and on. More of this is really the responsibility of the places that would be subject to this tax, and they'll be responsible for imposing it. One of the things that we've discovered is, working in conjunction with the Indiana Department of Revenue, we have found that we've had difficulty in making sure that all of the food and beverage retailers in the jurisdiction of Merrillville are aware of their responsibility to collect that tax on behalf of the town. Now, they remit this tax first to the state of Indiana, and it is enforced, by the way, by the Indiana Department of Revenue as any of the taxes that are subject to this law. So the definitions of what is subject to the food and beverage tax are set by statute and are interpreted through regulations or opinion statements and bulletins set out by the commissioner of the department. So we're subject to that. We did make the determination here to make the imposition because presently there is not a property tax that is supporting directly the operation of the Dean and Barbara White Community Center, one of our assets of recreation that we're most proud of. And only a small amount of it is subject to the operation and care of the parks that are in our park system. In fact, it's a very small part of the several departments in our Corporation General Fund, which does have a property tax levy, but most of that property tax levy really is allocated for other purposes in that general fund, most of which is also public safety. So that was the rationale for having it. The clerk treasurer's office can actually give you a much more timely report on the amount that we've collected. It is remitted by each of the regular businesses that are subject to this. And right now there's about 58 of those that are complying that we're aware of. And that's revealed to us by communications with the Indiana Department of Revenue. And since the end of June 30th of 2024, which is the last formal audited report that we get from the Office of the Clerk Treasurer, the amount that we've received to date is $165,063.17. Now, depending on your frame of reference, that may sound like a lot of money. And this is collected slightly in arrearage. So let me explain how that works. The tax is imposed and first effective in February. February takes place. If you're a business that knew that you were subject to it, you would, after the end of February, prepare your remittances for all those taxes that you would collect like that have to go down to the State Department of Revenue. Those might be remitted by the middle of the following month. And then those taxes, after they're verified, are sent back to our community directly to the office of the clerk treasurer and deposited in a fund under the statute called the Food and Beverage Receipts Fund. And that is remitted by the Department of Revenue to the town, to the custody of the fiscal officer, which is the clerk treasurer's office. Those started becoming relevant. We started receiving those then roughly, I believe, in April. That's how that timetable starts to be, that's how that timetable works out in terms of the collection and then distribution to us. The good news is that the collections each month have been increasing slightly, but we understand that there's probably more places in the town of Merrillville that are subject to this than are currently aware that they need to comply. So the town has spent a good deal of its energy trying to communicate that among the many things we're trying to do. We're not eager to find ways to create more taxes on our residents or on the people that visit Merrillville. We are trying to find a rational way to balance the needs of our community, all the needs of our community as a general service government, providing public safety, planning, fire protection through its territory, and the vast other matters of service, street management, street paving, street construction, and the like. We do all of this through the collection of those taxes. These taxes, being new, we hope is going to give us a recurrent resource that can be dedicated, at least in part, to the operation of recreation programming, parks and recreation generally. And specifically, our hope is it will help fortify us with regard to the operation of the Dean and Barbara White Center. Until we get a regular handle on this, we're still watching and we're hopeful. And we're going to take steps to try to send out mailers and contact those businesses that we know do come under the definition of a collector for this tax. And our hope is that over time, this tax will generate the kind of resources that will support the services that quality and at the lowest possible cost to the residents of Merrillville, including attractions that make it attractive both for the people who live here, but also the people who visit here. I remember as a young boy, young boy's probably overstated, as a teen, visiting Merrillville all the time to see movies at the Crossroads Theater when it was here. I was often at the Rocky Horror Picture Show at the midnight showing there. My family liked the Ponderosa here. My wife's family, who actually grew up here in Merrillville, liked it too. So we're eager to see Merrillville succeed. And I hope that I'm just a part of helping that happen. One of my duties is to help support the council in its direct service to the residents and helping them serve you as well as they can. Also in a delivery of services at the highest possible quality and at the lowest possible cost. In terms of anything else about the food and beverage tax, I'm willing to take specific questions. The only other thing I would add, because I teach and have taught the graduate class on public budget and finance at Indiana University since roughly around 2002, and I've been an adjunct instructor there since 1999, teaching on subjects related to public administration. I'm also the former clerk treasurer of the town of Highland, where I served for 30 years and 37 days. I always add that. And I only left at the end of that term to have an opportunity to serve in the state senate. But basically, I'm trained for public finance, and I got the opportunity to serve as a town manager here, and I'm eager to do that, and I'm enjoying it most days. Having said that, one of the natures of the sales or the excise taxes, they're often imposed and they feel regressive. That is to say, they sometimes unduly fall on those who have the least means to pay. So an inherently regressive tax versus an inherently progressive tax can't be changed from their character. So if a tax is said to be progressive, you cannot make it regressive. And if a tax is said to be regressive, you cannot make it progressive. But you can make them less of whatever their character is. One of the things about the food and beverage tax that makes it appealing in some senses to some persons who are practitioners in public finance is that it is less regressive than a pure sales tax. Why? Because it applies broadly. It can be collected from businesses because of business lunches that take place in restaurants that would be subject to this, as well as to ordinary persons who are visiting the restaurant, whether they're residents of Merrillville or not. Also, I did get in touch with a respected scholar and friend from Indiana University who is trained in economics. He's a professor, associate professor of economics in the School of Business and Economics at Indiana University Northwest. And I asked him a little bit about, before we moved forward, with regard to would it have a negative impact in terms of the businesses having a price point of impact that would lower their collection rates or lower the amount of visitors who might decide to go somewhere else. And while he says that we weren't the size that would warrant perhaps a formal study to get that in mind, he did share some of the technical literature on the subject. And largely that literature assures me that in all the studies, these tend not to have an adverse effect on demand for the services, and pricing points are not affected adversely in terms of the demand for the services or the desirability of people to go there. And in many cases, they support the kind of activities that promote more visitors, and more visitors are better for business, and it does provide more resources for us to provide those services to our residents that we were talking about earlier, Parks and Rec and visitor services. I probably got a little too encyclopedic about that. I apologize. One of my superpowers is being a nerd. So people who know me well know that's who I am. And I wanted to add that to try to explain the rationale and why the legislature even grants these powers to local governments. As I said earlier, 34 counties and or local governments have been authorized to do that. The 34th one, by the way, was not Merrillville, but it was the city of Hammond. And the city of Hammond did take steps to authorize its retail sales tax, its retail food and beverage tax. And it will go into effect August 1st of this year. So it's a day away. In fact, tomorrow it will go into effect. And they too will be able to use it for similar purposes to us. I think it's tied to the operation of their current operating sports complex and related purposes. Are there any questions coming in, Mr. Riley? I think I've exhausted the subject of food and beverage tax and what they're used for. I will tell you that when I teach this in my class, before Merrillville or the city of Jasper got it, I did like to go around and talk about what it's used for in some places. The third oldest food and beverage tax that's allowed in the state of Indiana actually takes place in Brown County. Many of you may know about Brown County. The city or the town of Nashville is at its hub, and it's actually its county seat. And it's famous because people visit it from all over the country and all over the state of Indiana as well, because it is essentially an artistic community or an artisan community. People visit it from everywhere to come down and visit its shops and partake in its restaurants and to enjoy the cultural experience and the purchases that you can get there. I'm one of those families too. So this is a community that has a modest population. I'm sure it is not in excess of 6,000. I believe it's below that. But they annually see visitors of over 5 million. So what do you do when that happens? If you're going to be hospitable, you got to have places for people to park, because after all, most of the local infrastructure and its public finance resource structure was designed to really serve the residents of the community. And guess what else you probably need? Bathrooms. Any of us who are parents that have ever had children that are below the age of 3 know how important that is. Actually, they're important to all of us, aren't they? So the food and beverage tax that is imposed in Brown County actually goes to support the cost of upkeep and installation of parking, and the maintenance and upkeep and installation of bathrooms, public restrooms not associated with the businesses that you may go into. We take something like that for granted, but it's a critical part of infrastructure to make the community be attractive and well host its visitors that support the economy there that is essentially artisan. So I have told my students, as I'll tell you as residents, we certainly want you to stay here and visit Merrillville, but if you ever go south and you visit Brown County and you visit Nashville in particular, make a point to stop at one of the many restaurants there, even the fast food ones, and you'll be doing your part to support bathroom quality and good parking. Some of the other purposes that food and beverage taxes can be employed throughout the state are also interesting. The city of Carmel has a 1% rate. And interestingly enough, that place is allowed to use it for general purpose revenue. The statute says they can use it for any legal municipal purpose. In Merrillville, it was a more narrow purpose. It's specific for the purposes I described earlier, parks and visitors or tourism economy. And so the council is bound to use it only for those purposes. We would be in serious violation if we did not. I assure you, however, there's no one on the town council promoting any other idea than to use it for its lawful purposes. Some of the other purposes are in Attica Town, which is in Fountain County. It's a small town located in that county, and it can use them for revitalization purposes or projects for revitalization. It's a community that actually had a significant impact from changes in the economy, and they're trying to sort of revitalize the community and make it more attractive, both for residents as well as visitors. Allen County, as I told you, is the very first area or county or government that was given express permission by the legislature to impose this. And in Allen County, it basically allows for the Coliseum improvement. They basically use that to do all kinds of improvements to its Coliseum and some related support subjects around there. If you haven't visited Allen County, which hosts so many nice places, probably most prominent in your mind is Fort Wayne, that tax has allowed them to do a lot of improvements and amenities, including to be able to be the host of a professional, albeit minor league baseball team. And there's other things to enjoy in that community. The city of Lebanon allows their food and beverage tax to be used for property tax reduction. The town of Cloverdale in Putnam County allows it to be used for sanitary sewer, wastewater treatment, and distribution facilities. The needs there were greater, and sometimes this happens. Most of those places have to use user charges to support their wastewater treatment and the like, but sometimes the rate requirements would be so significant to bring them into compliance or to upkeep or develop their treatment plant, particularly if they're not proximate to another place that has it, where they don't get the economy of scale that really environmental treatment and purposes really benefits from. So this was an imposition to help with that. And I haven't talked to a colleague down there in a long time to find out about it, but it's really helped a little bit as well. The modernized town of Zionsville, the very first governmental entity to modernize itself, which is sort of a quasi-merger, but it actually allows you to reconfigure government under the law that got passed under Governor Daniels. They call it the Modernization of Government Act. So it allows two units of government to blend and provide either a new public political subdivision or, in the case, another government. Zionsville basically reconstructed itself along with its township as the town of Zionsville, but it's really kind of reconfigured itself much like a Class 3 city, which would be like Crown Point near us, where they have a mayor, even though they're still a town, and they have a 7-member city council. But the rest of their public officials are appointed, including their finance officer. That's allowable under that law.